opening line was, "You all have worn very colorful packages." And that was his nod to all the clothes everyone was wearing in the room.
Welcome to the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast that takes you on a fascinating journey into the hearts and minds of the amazing people who work in the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. My name is Veronica, and I am a PhD candidate studying fat-based food emulsions. On this podcast, we share insights from professionals at all stages of their careers. Find out what they do, why they do it, and how they are changing the food world one day at a time. So no matter what your passion is, there's always something for everyone in food, and we'll help you find it. Hello everyone, it's Veronica. Welcome back to the FoodGrads Podcast. On today's episode, we are talking about the fields of packaging and project management, lessons learned in managing teams, and the importance of staying curious. Our guest today is Karen Aranha, Innovation and Commercialization Project Manager at the Hershey Company. Karen graduated with a bachelor's degree from the University of Mumbai in packaging and printing technology. After getting some experience in the field, she obtained a master's degree in packaging science from the Rochester Institute of Technology. After graduating, she worked at the Packaging Corporation of America as a packaging engineer, where she developed and executed merchandising displays and corrugated packaging. Although she now works in the project management side of the food industry, she remains passionate about packaging and is a self-proclaimed packaging geek. This episode of the podcast is powered by Careers Now. Careers Now is Food and Beverage Ontario's multi-year workforce development initiative that is connecting students and job seekers with employers in Ontario's food and beverage processing industry for exciting career opportunities. Check out careersnow.ca for more information on exciting jobs, career information, industry mentors, and training opportunities for professional development. Hi, Karen. How are you doing today? Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hi, Veronica. Thanks for inviting me. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing very good. Today has been a very productive Saturday for you. For you. It's been a really productive Saturday for me. I was able to do a few things, and I'm looking forward to having an even better evening because I get to talk with you. So once again, thanks for
Aw,
coming on the show.
you're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me. And yeah, it was a productive day for me as well. I raked my front yard, so I think that counts for something.
Hey, that is not easy work. It can be very, it's tedious. If you want to have a nice looking lawn, it takes some time.
Yeah, I think podcasts and such get me through it. So that's the only way I could get through something, I guess, as mind numbing as raking, if you will.
That was me with the cleaning today, so I totally feel you. Well, I'm so happy that again I got to have you on the show. I found you as we speak about podcasts from another podcast called The Packaging People, where I stumbled upon you a little bit ago, and as I was listening to the podcast, I was like, this woman is amazing. I have to get her on the show. So I'm happy it worked out.
Well, I'm glad you found that podcast with Adam Peake. I've personally had listened to quite a few episodes. I've kind of fallen off the rails on that one now, but there were definitely multiple episodes that I personally learned a lot from as well. So yeah, I was happy to be on that one, and I'm super excited to be on this one as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going through more of his episodes. He's not, as you know, from our podcast, it's from in the food space, and obviously his
Right.
trajects all across, but it is really fascinating packaging. And that's why in part I wanted to get you on the show. So without further ado, I think that we should learn a little bit more about you. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself. And you've had an amazing, really interesting career journey, and I would love to share that a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about yourself, and maybe you could walk us through how you got into the packaging space and now you're in project management, and we'll let you take it from there.
Sounds good. So I grew up in India, and through my growing up years, I always wanted to be a scientist. I used to love watching cartoons, and I grew up watching a lot of Powerpuff Girls and a lot of Dexter's Laboratory, and definitely 100% saw myself as someone who would wear a white lab coat and walk around all day long. Cut to me not getting the best grades after 10th grade and then again after 12th grade. And in India, 12th grade, after 12th grade is when you decide, what major or what stream you're going to go into. So usually it diverges as science or commerce or arts. And I knew for sure it had to be science. So I managed getting in there. I got, decent grades, but not the best ones. And then from there, it further diverged into, okay, do you want to go into medical or engineering or something else? And that's when I was at crossroads. So my dad is an engineer and he's a mechanical engineer and he'd be away from home a lot, and I knew I didn't want to do that. Like, to me it was important to just be home, I guess. And so I was like, no, absolutely not, I don't want to be an engineer, definitely not a mechanical engineer. And so at the time, computer science and computer engineering was the hot thing in India. And
Hmm.
a lot of my friends and a lot of my cousins were going into the IT space, computer engineering, the electronics and telecommunication space. And I thought that that's where I wanted to be as well.
Hmm.
Until I went for admissions to this one particular college where the principal asked me, what is it that you want to be, and why do you want to be an electronics and telecommunication engineer? And I didn't have a better answer than my cousin is one. And he's like, go home, think about it, and we can talk more about it. And I went home, thought about it, and then I realized, yeah, I mean, I really don't know much about the field. There's nothing that's a special draw for me personally. Maybe I should explore a bit more before I commit to something. And that's when I came across packaging engineering. So I attended this orientation session, and the speaker, who was the chairman of the school, said, opening line was, you all have worn very colorful packages. And that was his nod to all the clothes everyone was wearing in the room. And I was like,
Huh.
that hook sold
Yeah.
me. Like, that's it. After that, everything he said, I was hanging by every single thing he said after that. So that's how I kind of ended in packaging. And the degree I ended up graduating with is called Bachelor's in Printing and Packaging Technology. And I was the guinea pig, so to speak, because it was the first time, as part of University of Mumbai, they were offering a 4-year degree in printing and packaging technology. At the time, there were 2-year post bachelor degrees, but
Hmm.
nothing that was a 4-year engineering degree. So, in a lot of ways, I call myself the guinea pig and all my classmates the guinea pigs, because we were the first ones to graduate with that engineering degree. And
Wow.
then I worked for a couple years with Unilever in India in the skincare space. So lots of lotions and face creams. I had previously interned with them for a few months as well in the oral care business. Walked away from them for a little bit because they didn't have a job for me. So worked in food a little bit and then came right back in the personal care space. Worked there a bunch of years and then realized I wanted to come pursue my master's. So I came to Rochester Institute of Technology, that has a great master's in packaging science program along with their bachelor's program as well. And loved it there. And, I owe everything I have from then on out to RIT. Ended up getting a job with Packaging Corporation of America as an on-site packaging engineer for Hershey, and now I'm a project manager with the Hershey company. So that's my story so far.
That's a lot. And there's been, I bet, a lot of things that have happened throughout. And wow, I think that's so cool being the first. So I'm assuming you were happy with your 4-year degree in packaging engineer if you ended up sticking with it. So you must have learned a lot.
I definitely learned a lot, and I didn't think it at the time, but when I graduated school and got my first job out of school, I was making, like, salary wise also, I was making probably 2 or 3 times more the money that my computer engineering friends were making, just because packaging is so niche.
Yeah. The
So
fa-
that was like an important, like, proud moment,
it's
I
a nice
guess.
plus. That's amazing. Because as soon as you said packaging engineer, I don't think I even was aware of it, period, when I was debating on what school to go to. And a lot of people kind of speak to it with the food science space. I think definitely food science has a lot more awareness, but even packaging engineer, like that's niche. Like that's a niche of a niche.
It definitely is, and it's a very interesting space to be in. I personally enjoy it, and for the amount of time I spend in the groceries, and my husband can attest to it. Like the amount of time I spend in a grocery store just admiring packaging or critiquing packaging, even though I went to get like produce, I suddenly veer off in one of the other aisles. And then, I'm like lifting packages up and down or like turning the pack around because the back of pack is now showing on the front and I want to see what the logo is like. It sometimes it borders on ridiculous obsession, but here we are.
You know what? Lead into your obsession. That's the way to go. If you love it, just go
Can you
even
tell
more
my
hard at
husband that?
it. I could gladly tell it. I do the same thing with my partner. I'll just talk about random stuff and just go really in depth with it, and he'll listen, so that's a good sign.
That's good.
But so with just go a little bit briefly, like what type of courses did you take when you were doing your packaging engineering degree? And then as well, I'd love to bridge that into the master's degree and why you decided to go back and do that.
Oh, fine. It's been a while since the bachelor's degree, but yeah, so we had courses on all the different packaging materials. So think about like glass, plastics, paper. I think we'd have like a dedicated semester per material. And then there was a packaging was one portion of that degree. The other portion was printing. So we, focused a lot on all the different print methods, the types of inks used. It's just something that you wouldn't normally think of, and just having to learn about it, like, hey, like there's, when you think about printing, it's just not one print method. There's
Mhm.
multiple different print methods, and it depends on the kind of substrate you want to have the print adhere to. It was just fascinating to me. Like I could sit in classes all day long, and I mean, I was the type A nerd in class. So
I
I'd
love that.
sit in the front of class and, take notes and make sure, like, I would be one of those people who would have my assignments ready to turn in before, like, well before it was due. And that's just, that's how much I love packaging, and I still do, even though I'm not in the field anymore.
Mhm. I love that. I love it's so nice to hear when someone's really passionate about the program they go in because a lot of people, especially at that age, aren't really sure about what they want to do. So they'll get a general science degree, or sorry, like they'll get a general degree not knowing where they want to go. So you don't really find the classes as engaging. But once you like to hear someone so excited about that, and obviously that pushed you enough to also want to continue schooling, not surprising anymore considering how you were in school. So just briefly, what did you do in your master's degree? Was it a course-based one or was it a research-based one?
It was a course based one, and for me, ever since I was a sophomore in my bachelor's program, I always felt like I wanted to do my master's or like have some form of higher education. But at the time, I wasn't sure if it was going to be an MBA or a specific like Master of Science degree. But it was there somewhere in the back of my mind. And then after I graduated, I said, you know what? I don't want to jump right into school again. I want to work in this field because at up until that point, packaging was very theoretical, right? Like I was taking all the classes, I was doing the classwork, but I didn't have any practical experience. So I wanted to make sure that I really loved the industry, and I decided to work for 3.5 years before I decided to come do my master's. So I did that, and then I still felt like, okay, I think there are some, I feel like I personally have some knowledge gaps, and maybe doing the master's degree would help. And it certainly did.
Oh,
So,
okay.
if you want to get into the coursework for the master's program, we had classes on packaging and sustainability. I had to take an audit class so at the beginning of our master's program, they gave us like a little test for all the grad students
Mhm.
just to see baseline because everyone was coming from different schools, different places, different backgrounds. they wanted to just get a sense of like what everyone's base level understanding is and where the gaps were. And my gaps ended up being in the corrugated packaging space. So I had to take an audit class in my first semester just to fill the gap. And I think it was the best class ever because I ended up then with Packaging Corporation of America that makes corrugated packaging. So if it wasn't for that class, I don't think I would be as strong in my basis of the work I was doing had it not been for that class.
Wow, way to fill in the gap. For those listening, they might not be too I mean, honestly, I'm one of those, like, corrugated material. What are you referring to?
I am referring to the Amazon boxes that show up at your door. So if you are calling them cardboard boxes or any other version of it, please don't. A packaging engineer cringes each time you do that. It is called corrugated paperboard
Okay.
or fiberboard, but not cardboard.
Okay, you're blowing my mind right now, so I'm trying to okay, hold on, what's the difference between cardboard and corrugated sorry, corrugated paper? Is that no, did I said that wrong.
So don't beat yourself up on it. I'm not judging you. When you think about a corrugated board, if you ever look at the cross section of the board, so if you open
Mhm.
your box and you look at the side of it, there's two pieces of paper and there's this little squiggly paper in between.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what corrugated is. So the squiggly paper is called medium, the sandwich layers are called liners, and that's why it's called corrugated, whereas cardboard would have been something like paperboard. So it's a single layer like a carton. So your toothpaste box is a carton, whereas your Amazon box is a corrugated box, if that makes it any
No,
clearer.
it makes I'm just mind blown. Like, this is what I mean, like, okay, now I can I mean, I'm not surprised, but now I understand really much more why you could do a 4-year degree and then on top of that do a master's, and still there's probably much more to explore. Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, wow. Um, that really opens my mind in terms of, um okay, so there's a whole thing of packaging, and I can understand now why engineers okay, just one last question before that, and then I'll move on with the corrugated board. Why is that a preference over, like, cardboard in terms of shipping?
Because remember the little sandwich thing we just talked about? That provides protection to your product inside. And
Okay.
there's different types of corrugated boxes. So you can have a single wall if it's just two pieces of paper with one squiggly corrugated medium in between. That's a single wall. There's double wall. So you'd have one, two, three, four, three layers of flat paper that would be your sandwich layers and two squiggly mediums in them. So there's single wall, double wall, triple wall, all these different kinds of,
Mhm.
specifications for corrugated. And then the height of the corrugated medium or the thickness of it would vary. So and then they have different nomenclatures as well. So there's A flute, B flute, C flute, E flute, micro flutes,
Wow.
all depending on, the kind of specifications you need for the product you're going to ship out. Therefore,
Mhm.
you know there
Wow.
it all depends on the amount of protection you need. And then the other aspect to it is, are you going to also need some kind of printing on it? So if you want to have a case that's nice to have, you want to put it on shelf but not make it look like a corrugated box, then you can have white paper that you can print on. And if it's a microflute, the print quality is better because the mediums are really small. So if you think about it, you have that medium in between. And if you had to print straight on top of it, it would cause the top liner to like cave, I guess, a little bit because of the
Oh,
pressure of printing.
right.
So your Amazon boxes right now, like most likely they're just printed with like black ink. So it's just one color.
Yeah.
But you might find corrugated boxes that have multiple colors printed on them.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a much more high quality print required, you might end up with something like a microflute case. But then you're probably not looking as much for the protection aspect as much as you're looking for aesthetics on the case.
That is so cool. Wow. That is so cool. Oh, okay. I got to learn more about packaging. This is wow. I mean, I've always known that packaging for any type of product is such an important aspect to the product itself, obviously getting to where it is without being broken. It also links
Mm-hmm.
to something being purchased and all that, but it's like its own product on top of a product. Like you don't a lot of people might not think much about it, but there's so much thought clearly that's going into it that it's a whole world.
There is this saying that's very common, and I'm sure you've heard it multiple times in your life so far. Think outside the box. And for a packaging engineer, it's like, no, no, no. We don't think outside the box. We think about the box.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, no, that's your mantra.
Yep. It was up until like, moved away into the project management
Yeah.
space. But I still have my little pin on my backpack that says I heart paper boxes and I shamelessly walk around with it.
I love that. Well, let's go back because I want to start weaving our story towards the project management and how you got into that space. But I wanted to just quickly go. So, what made you switch to the So, okay, sorry, I should take it back. So, with your work at the Packaging Corporation of America, was that primarily working with food related packaging, or was that a mixture of different things?
So my role at Packaging Corporation of America was really also my first role with Hershey because I was a on-site packaging engineer, which meant I sat in the Hershey company headquarters in Pennsylvania in their office with with Hershey's uh, company owned laptop with a badge, even though it said contractor on it, like still a Hershey badge. So sitting in the Hershey office, my only client for PCA was Hershey. Like I was dedicated support for any needs
Hmm.
Hershey had for Packaging Corporation of America, which was one of their multiple corrugated suppliers. So my job was basically to service them with their corrugated packaging needs. So whether that was brown boxes, which is like your Amazon boxes, very cut and dry, straight, nothing fancy about it, to displays on shelves at like Walmart or any of the stores for Hershey chocolate, right? So it
Hmm.
could be a Easter display, for example, or like a s'mores display, or it could just be like a little tower
Hmm.
standing in one of the aisles in the store. Or it could just be multicolored printed boxes for candy that are stacked on the shelves. So if you've ever seen like Halloween candy in like orange boxes and
Yep.
such, I may have had a hand. If it's a PCA box, I
Yeah.
may have had a hand in the past.
That's cool. It's so funny because in the food space with the food science, or if you work anywhere in that, my favorite thing would be coming into the store and saying, "Oh yes, I helped make that," or "I looked at the lock code of this particular line." But you're going in, going, "Oh, I designed that cardboard. I mean, sorry, not cardboard, the corrugated board for that display." That's cool. That is so
Yeah,
cool, and I can
yeah, for
see.
sure.
So, and I understand with Hershey being as big as it is, obviously, I can understand why you had a dedicated role towards just them because across the country, there was probably specialized for specialized regions. Hershey does so many different campaigns throughout the year. So I can imagine they kept you busy.
Oh, they definitely kept me very busy. And also, Packaging Corporation of America is a really big company. So I think they have like over 90 or 100 different manufacturing locations all across America. And I want to say over 8 to 10 manufacturing plants of PCA service or at the time serviced Hershey. I'm sure the business
Hmm.
has progressed now. I don't know where they're at with their
Yeah.
stats, but while I was still there, like a lot of the plants were servicing Hershey, and it was all these different things, right? It could be anything as simple as a regular slotted carton, which is also another name for corrugated, but like anything from like the brown box all the way to a Walmart display or a Walmart shelf, easy open case.
Hmm. Okay. And I can see in this role as well, at this point when you are at PCA, you were doing the project management because that, even though you're designing these different displays, that involves a lot of like project management, obviously, like coordinating with different individuals, making sure that things are made on time. So how was that portion? Like, I guess you started to fall in love with that portion as well.
Yeah, again, project management was something I'd heard of up until that point. It's something I was curious about, but I wasn't really sure about, like how to get into it, what to do. And my role at PCA and Hershey was a lot of coordination. So I was not the one who was actually designing the boxes.
Oh,
I
okay.
had a design counterpart. I had a designer down the street in our PCA lab in Hershey
Hmm.
who would help with the design work. Like I would just be the one saying, hey, like Hershey has a need. I just spoke with the packaging engineer on the team. These are the specifications, these are the requirements. It has to be 6 bars deep and it has to be 2 bars wide, whatever the case may be. And there might be a component of like this is the amount of strength the box needs to hold. I may have done the math already,
Uh-huh.
and so him and I would coordinate on it. He would come up with the design. He would make the samples and bring it over. We'd size it. We'd check it together. He'd make the engineering drawings for them. I would go over it, make sure meeting the spec, it's accurate before I passed it along to Hershey. But then I would also be working with the customer service team, the sales teams, if there were orders for like a line trial or something of the sort. And there would be multiple projects funneling through me to the PCA team. So depending on what manufacturing location for Hershey we are servicing, we would decide, okay, which plant should this project run at? Oh, maybe this one's closer to this plant, so maybe let's run this. Or maybe there's equipment related decisions that need to be made where Hershey requires something, but the closest plant for PCA doesn't have the equipment to make it. So maybe it goes to another plant. And I'd work with our sales team and our account manager on those decisions. But it was a lot of coordination back and forth, not just within PCA, like me to everybody in PCA, but then me back to the Hershey team as well, because they were the ones coming with the request first, right? So they'd come to me with the request, I'd work with my team, and then once we'd have a response, I'd work back with the Hershey team to say, okay, this is how we are thinking about it, or this is when you can have the material, these are the timelines for it. So effectively, that kind of pushed me into project management. Like I was already doing project management
Hmm.
in some shape or form.
Huh. It sounds as though it just happened, so to say, and where I'm
I
going with,
guess.
like, you picked up the skills. You weren't saying, "I am a project manager and I'm gonna like this is my job," but it sounds like it was, one step at a time, just coordinating and then just picking up those skills. Because I can imagine those skills weren't necessarily taught when you were doing packaging engineering.
Those skills aren't taught, but if you are going to be in an industry, and it doesn't matter what industry, unless you're a computer programmer who is working all by yourself, if you are in any sort of team dynamics, I think you are going to be doing some level of project management. So even if you are in, I look at my R&D counterparts at Hershey, right? Like they're the ones who are working on prototypes for new candy, and then they're working with their suppliers to get options on the table for all the ingredients, and then they're working with marketing. Like no matter where you are or what part of business you may be in, I think everybody on some level is already doing some project management without realizing it. And on paper, like at PCA, I think somewhere on paper, my title also was project coordinator at some point. So I guess it was there. It just wasn't as evident. You like it's things you do, but you don't think about it as much.
Mhm. That makes sense. I know with my PhD that I'm currently doing, it's come to my realization that, and even just doing organizing stuff with the FoodGrads podcast and such, I'm like, I did a lot of project management without realizing it. When did I sign up for this again? Because it's a challenge because you
Yes.
have to stay focused on the task at hand. And it's very easy to, without timelines, without even artificial ones in my case, that you can kind of derail yourself. And, or if, if you don't contact someone fast enough, it can be very difficult to manage.
It can be, and that's where the challenge lies as well.
So I mean, obviously you kind of are in the thick of it. How do you stay organized? Like, how do you is it simple as just keeping a calendar? Do you have like very advanced software? How do you make sure that you're still organized with the projects that you manage?
So here is a challenge for you, like for you and for all your listeners. If you have a better way to manage things, please let me know, because I do not use any like high-tech software. I try to keep my calendar in Microsoft Outlook, my work account, as up to date as possible. If you ever look at my calendar, I think I could end up overwhelming a lot of people because I like to block time and like visually have that reminder of this is what I want to do in this moment. So there, something might come across my desk and there'd be something I need to work on, and maybe I'm already working on something else, so I can't jump on it right away. So I will future date that task, knowing that, depending on
Mhm.
how time sensitive it is, I will future date that task where I can, or like try to hop on it immediately if it's an emergency, but then something else has to shift. So I try to like schedule those things on my calendar. For example, there's certain brands within the company that I'm already working on as their project manager, and so we have weekly meetings about those. So it's not surprising. I know, the meeting is on Tuesday every week for this particular topic. I will block time on my calendar on Mondays to make sure I work on the agenda and send the agenda out to the cross-functional team. So I'm keeping everybody else also organized of, hey guys, for this meeting, these are the things we want to talk about because these are the challenges or problems or next steps we need to work through. That's how I do it. But if somebody else has a better way to do it, please let me know.
As you're speaking, I don't know if you're aware of Cal Newport, the author of Deep Work and A World Without Email. I listen to his podcast all the time, but he also has his books, and that's exactly what he says to do is time block. Like you're saying, exactly what he suggests. And he said he's a college professor, but he also writes for the New Yorker. He does all that, and he time blocks just like you. So it sounds like it's a good way to manage projects because that's what he suggests. So if it works, it
It's the
works.
only way to get it done. If I mean, I guess there's multiple ways to do it, but it's the only way that works for me.
I think it's a good one. I've been honestly trying to lean in really much into that lately because I've been trying to juggle multiple projects in that, and I realized that it's easy to make a list of 10 things to do, but when you don't see the time, you realize once you actually put into your calendar that, oh, this is not going to fit, or this is can't work, and it really puts you in the moment, but also plans for the future. And it allows you to a little bit be more aware of your time. So I agree with you.
Right.
I think it's a good way. With that being said, I haven't actually really spoken a lot about, so you were doing project management. So now you're at Hershey. Is it still project management in the packaging side space, or is it actually managing things like the commercialization of products in that area?
Yeah. So in Feb 2021, I switched sides and went from working for PCA and Hershey to working solely for Hershey, completely walking away from the packaging world and working on Hershey's, at the time, sweets and refreshments products, commercialization, and innovation. So it was everything to do with Jolly Rancher gummies and Icebreakers gum and mint and the Twizzlers brand. And that was where I effectively got my footing as an associate project manager at Hershey. And I guess I love it so much. I'm still here.
That's amazing. Oh, that's so cool. It's so cool how one role can lead to another. And, you never set out to do project management, but you're here. And I know that I think it was recently, or maybe you just updated recently on LinkedIn that you moved to more of the salty snack side. Am I recalling that correctly?
That is correct. And I just updated LinkedIn finally since it's performance review season. And I realized, hey, I went through my whole performance review and it was great. And I realized that I never updated truly what I was doing on LinkedIn. So at the end of last year, I had, Hershey was integrating all our different salty snack businesses within Hershey. Those were acquisitions over the past couple of years that we were finally integrating into the company. And so I was asked if I would like to lead the back lead the data migration portion of that project, and that project is still ongoing. So I said yes to that opportunity, and I'm so glad I did because that opened the door also for me to be a project manager on the salty snacks division.
I'm not, I can't think at the top of my head what these snacks are under the Hershey, because I mean, obviously everyone thinks of chocolate and Hershey. So what are some of the brands there?
So we have Skinny Pop popcorn. We
Mm.
also have the Reese's popcorn and cookies and cream popcorn, so under the Hershey brand. And then we also have Dots pretzels, which if you haven't tried Dots pretzels, the cinnamon sugar is my personal favorite. And given that the holidays are just around the corner, I would definitely recommend you trying those.
Cinnamon's my all-time favorite flavor. I put pumpkin spice on my toast all year round just to get that cinnamon. Do you know if it's available in Canada? If not, I might have.
I would. I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll look it up. I'm gonna look it up and I'll make sure to
You're
try it.
at most you're going to have to cross the border into Niagara Falls and get it at a Walmart.
But I definitely know I can get the Reese's popcorn here. So I haven't tried that yet, so I'm gonna have to do that.
It's really good. You must try it.
I know it definitely have to try it. I'm just amazed by how many places Reese's has been to as I'm thinking about the packaging, or sorry, not the packaging, the whole Reese's Pieces line. Like I think that you also just did Reese's Pieces frozen fruit. I think I'm remembering that.
I don't know if I've tried that.
Yeah, it's something under the portfolio. I definitely know. I hope I'm not I think it's Reese's. You know what? I'm gonna look this up quickly. Yes, it is. Yeah, the new frozen chocolate covered fruit. So you have the Hershey's, the strawberry. So it's chocolate covered bananas, and then the cookies and
Oh, yes,
cream.
I've seen those in the market. Yep.
Yes. Well, side tangent with that, but coming back to with your career and then doing the project management, you're in this new space, you're learning about salty snacks. Has there been anything that you've been learning about recently, or topics or maybe skills that have been important to you right now that you're actively trying to learn?
Well, this whole past year has been a big learning experience for me, generally speaking, just because it was a new division, working with new team members that I hadn't ever worked with before. A lot of them weren't even part of the Hershey company.
Mm-hmm.
prior to that. So the entire integration has taught me a lot. And I guess I'm also one of those people who's like trying to constantly read up on different topics. But the biggest thing for me this year also has been that as of July, I have the responsibility now of a direct report. So I am now a people manager, and that is very different from being an individual contributor. So, yes, in project management capacity, you are still responsible for a team. You're responsible for some of the outcomes of the team, and you're trying to make sure that even though you don't have reporting structure authority on people, you're still the one who's trying to lead and guide and keep the team on track. So, in an informal capacity, you are that person who's constantly trying to guide your team to make sure everyone is rowing in the same direction. But when you are a people manager, it becomes a whole other ball game. This person is looking to you for guidance and advice. You are responsible for their growth in the company. So I am now, as I am being a project manager on salty snacks, I'm also learning how to be a people manager and how to be a responsible people manager. And I think that, again, those are things no matter how many books you read on the subject, you just have to go through these yourself and find your own style. And so that's what I'm going through right now.
Wow. Yeah, I could imagine that's a really tough just transformation. It's an exciting to learn in that, but different people have different ways about going things, and it's finding something that being that mentor or being that leader to make sure that it works well for one person might not be the best way of communication for another. And really, I I feels like it also be learning how to read people maybe? I don't know how I wanna word this, but really becoming more in tune with other people's rhythms.
Yeah, it is. You are right. It's trying to understand what it is that your direct report or the people you're leading want from their own careers, and how you're going to help get them to that next level, right? Like, how do you unlock the best out of your people so that they can go out there and do truly the things that they want to achieve?
That's that sounds tough. But I'm assuming it's been treating you well then, like, I bet it could also be really rewarding seeing people grow, being
It
that
is
person.
highly rewarding, and my direct report is a superstar. And while I am trying to best be the best leader I can be for her, I'm also looking at my manager and learning how, like trying to see how he manages things and see if I can pick up on small things here or there in our daily interactions that I could apply to my own ways of working and ways of leading. So it's this constant evolution and constant learning, I think.
For
I don't
sure.
think we're ever going to get to a point where somebody can just say, okay, I've done it all, unless you're retiring and I know it all.
I swear the people who retire still don't feel that, and then they still keep doing it because they wanna just keep doing more of that. Wow. Have you been though I know you said that you can't really read a book on anything, but have you, out of curiosity, been trying to learn about those types of things through books or maybe podcasts or something?
I do. I do try to read up on information, and I have a pretty big stack. Like, I try to listen to a lot of audiobooks recently. Just sitting down and reading a book format has not been something I have been able to do much this year. So I try to, like I said earlier when we just started the podcast, like I try to either listen to podcasts when I'm raking or like cleaning.
Mhm.
And a lot of the times I find myself listening to Simon Sinek's a bit of optimism is the podcast.
Okay.
And he has a lot of interesting episodes where they talk about either leadership. Today's episode was it revolved around like teammateship and like, yes, leadership is one thing, but if you can't get everybody on your team to strive towards the same goal, you can have one or two superstars on the team, but you're still going to probably at some point fail because not everybody's on the same page. So that was a very interesting episode, I thought.
Hmm. That sounds I'll have to definitely check it out. I'm looking I get it with the reading. I love reading, but I feel like if you have a very knowledge-based, especially with the type of work that you do with a lot of context shifting and doing a lot of meetings and that, sometimes by the end of the day, as much as you would love to dive into a book, it's very mentally it's stimulating in that, and sometimes it's
Hmm.
just easier to throw it in through an audiobook or podcast, so I get it.
Absolutely.
Mhm. I also wanted to take this as an opportunity because I always like to ask my guests for our students that are listening. If you were to give advice to students that were looking to go either into the packaging space or the project management space, or maybe even just life in general, is there any advice that you would give?
I guess, you got to take a chance on yourself. You're never going to have all the answers all the time. So, how do you just, stay open, take the chances if something seems interesting to you? And if it's low risk, where it's not like you're trying to invest a bunch of money, or it's not like, as long as you're not making rash decisions, if you find yourself being curious about something, pursue that curiosity, because that curiosity is going to lead you somewhere. And again, if there's low risk ways of pursuing your curiosity, go for it. Like, what's there to lose? So think about it as, I heard you when you were speaking one of your previous episodes talk about how you are part of the student outreach program for PMCA. And through that program, you yourself learn skills you wouldn't otherwise learn. So you are flexing yourself and developing those muscles that you wouldn't have otherwise developed if you wouldn't be part of that program or association. Look at what other things you may be interested in, and it doesn't have to be in your strong, top three skills, but you could always be building a muscle for something else, because you never know where life is going to take you and you're going to use those skills down the road. I certainly didn't think that coordinating with all the suppliers back when I started my first job with Unilever, and I was working with all different types of packaging materials. So I would have, like, let's say, three suppliers per material, and let's say there's five different materials, so there's 15 different suppliers. Then you coordinate with the internal teams, then you coordinate with the manufacturing plants, just all that coordination back and forth. I think I was developing all my project management muscles slowly but surely there without even thinking about it. So if you find something interesting, you should definitely go for it. Don't ever like stop yourself. And I could have stopped myself and said, "Hey, I really don't know that much about project management. Am I even qualified to take this role?" But I said, "You know what? I've been working for Hershey unofficially for 3.5 years, almost 4 years at that point." I was like, I've been doing enough coordination. I think I could probably handle this. And the guy who ended up hiring me, I was working on his team as his packaging engineer, and I'd seen him run his meetings and I loved it. So when this opportunity arose, I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, is this on your team and are you hiring?" And he said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Can I apply for it?" He said, "Go for it." And then I interviewed with them and I ended up in the role. And even since me starting as an associate project manager back in 21 to now being a project manager and a people leader in 23, I can look back and see at how much growth I've had in just this short 2 years and what 8 9 months at this point. So you're going to have to take a risk at some point, and you're going to come to a point where you're going to ask yourself, am I going to be okay with the amount of discomfort I'm going to feel because of this risk I'm about to take? And if the answer is yes, then you should do it, and you're probably going to come out much stronger on the other end.
I love that. I love that. That's so good. It just shows sometimes the best times that you're learning is when you don't even realize that you're learning because you're just taking it a step at a time and then you're gaining these skills in the background. But then as well that, taking risks is scary, but if you can find little low risk, and I like what you pointed out with the PMCA, like volunteering, if you don't maybe
Mhm.
want to put your neck on the line during career, you might want to try something on the side that maybe tests to see how you work with people, or maybe it's managing a project that's through a volunteering organization. Like there's so many opportunities outside of just your career that can really help build those skills. And I think that's really good, Karen.
Absolutely. And even if you're in the work setting, try to see if you can find a cross training program within your organization. You don't have to, abandon your job and start something brand new. But if something's interesting to you, try and meet the people who are doing the job. Be curious, ask them what their day to day looks like. If it still sounds interesting, try and see if you can, help them out with one project here or there. And if it's, a couple hours of your work week or something, and if they say yes, or a lot of the times we hear about teams being short staffed or like companies being short staffed, I'm sure those people would be more than happy to accept the help. So you're getting to learn new skills with the support of the team that knows what they're doing, and it's their bread and butter, and they're guiding you and teaching you something. And and you're getting to scratch that itch. And if it turns out that yes, you do have a passion for that, then maybe you are cut out for it, and you'll pick up the skills along the way, and you'll be well on your way to pursuing a career in that, whatever it is.
Well, I think that's a good place to end because I think that we're leaving on such a good note with that advice. And I think that's something that any student should take in, or any new graduate, or anyone really in their any point in their career, because we're all learning. And like I've heard in the past, and she just said, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So there's always an opportunity to learn and just take a risk and take a chance. And I think that you've really demonstrated that with your career journey, Karen. So what before I let you go, I need to ask, where can people find you?
LinkedIn is the best place to find me. Just don't send me a cold invite, but definitely, if you've heard this podcast, you like this podcast, let me know about it. Send me a little intro, because I prefer not to just
Yes.
randomly
Yes.
accept invites.
Me too. I totally get it. I'm like, there's 250 characters or 150. Just say something. It really,
Right.
you might as well if you're interested in the person. So amazing. I'll make sure to link that in the show notes and make sure everyone, if you do reach out to Karen, you tell her why you're actually reaching out. But once again, thank you so much, Karen, for coming on the show. I loved learning more. You have blown my mind a couple of times through this episode, and I think that the audience is going to love it too. So thanks for coming on the
The
show.
pleasure is mine, Veronica. I hope there's more people who would love to be in either the packaging space or the project management space. Both the spaces continue to grow, and it's always it. If you ever skim LinkedIn, there's probably jobs out there that we're constantly hiring for. So both places are great places to be, and we'd love to have you.
Amazing. I hope that this episode inspires some people to take a plunge and learn more about it because I know that I just did.
Thanks, Veronica.
That was episode 84 of the FoodGrads Podcast. All the notes to this podcast can be found by clicking on the FoodGrads website and the Student and Grads tab. Or you can conveniently find any of the notes in the description of this podcast episode. If you enjoyed this episode, then please consider giving it a 5-star rating on wherever you get your podcast. Once again, thank you to our partner Careers Now for their continued support of this podcast, so we can continue to deliver great conversations like the one you just heard. So, funny story about this podcast episode. In order to get an idea of how this podcast generally goes, a lot of guests like to look at past episodes. And that's exactly what Karen did. So she decided to peruse some past episodes. And the one that she stumbled upon was way back in episode 6 with Elizabeth Hagerman, who was a food scientist at the Royal Corporation. But the funny thing is, after that podcast episode, She moved on to work at the Hershey company as a regulatory specialist in the salty snacks division. So, since that episode, she completed her master's degree, as stated on the podcast episode, in global food law at Michigan State University. Now she's working in the same place as Karen, so they actually know each other. So, pretty cool, and it's a pretty small world, and it just highlights how this industry, seemingly so large, is also quite small. And it's always important to be mindful to who you talk to, as you might end up working with them later on. Coming back to Karen, I think one of the things that was really cool that was highlighted in this episode is how Karen has been impacted by so many inspirational people in her life, and that there are so many impactful, seemingly simple conversations that have shaped her career path. It also goes to show how experiences from seemingly different areas can shape us and eventually lead to unique career paths. I love Karen's enthusiasm for her job and just how much she loves packaging. Now I know, corrugated boxes and cardboard, not the same thing. Anyways, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and I will see you next time.